Coming up on the Sky News Daily with me, Niall Paterson, India and Pakistan are at each other's throats again. So, what's brought the two nuclear powers so close to all-out conflict?
The first 100 days might be over, but President Trump is showing no signs of slowing down.
America will soon be greater than ever before.
So we're continuing to follow every twist and turn of this remarkable presidency.
And trying to make sense of what it all means for the US and for the rest of the world.
So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Malka Kellner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Sky News Trump 100, wherever you get your podcasts.
A terrorist attack last month resulted in the deaths of at least 26 Indian tourists. India blamed Pakistan. Retaliation was always coming, and it came in the form of missile strikes on Pakistan and Pakistan-administered territory. The situation is now threatening to bubble over into a broader conflict. Not that the antagonism began a fortnight ago. Tensions between the two are nothing new. Professor Michael Clarke, our defence analyst, is here to explain. But first and foremost, tell me about that terrorist attack and the Indian response.
Yeah, the terrorist attack was the worst for some years because it was against tourists. Tourist trade is important both to Indian-administered Kashmir and to Pakistan-administered Kashmir because it's such a beautiful place that lots of tourists want to go there. So an attack on tourists was an embarrassment to India, it was shameful, and it was deeply hurtful to the whole economy. And it was a big attack. So the Indians were always likely to retaliate, and they said they would. Mm-hmm. And the question now is, what will the Pakistanis do? They say they will respond, but the Indians are inviting them to make a symbolic response and leave it at that.
Michael, just tell me just a little bit then about the retaliation from the Indian side.
We don't know yet. It was missiles, and there were 9 targets. I mean, most of them were in the Pakistan-administered area of Kashmir. One of them at Bahawalpur is inside Pakistan itself. That's the one that hit a mosque. And what the Indians say is that that mosque was a centre for Jaish-e-Mohammed, which is one of the groups that they blame for fomenting terrorist attacks in general.
I mean, this is not the first incident taking place between India and Pakistan. Where does it all begin?
Oh, it begins with Indian independence in 1947. But that independence was based on partition between Muslims and Hindus. Partition itself was accompanied by the death of over 2 million people.
Yeah.
The violence that accompanied that partition with such rapid decolonization. There was Britain trying to get out of empire, and both in Palestine and in India, it did it so rapidly, it created a great deal of violence. And so all of that feeds into this legacy of injustice on both sides. The last Governor-General of India was Lord Louis Mountbatten, and it was his responsibility to try to come up with a solution. There was no agreement on what a future constitution of a united India would look like. And his idea was that it had to be 2 separate states. So we had to have an Indian state, which is predominantly, but not exclusively, Hindu, and a new state of Pakistan, which is both East and West Pakistan at the time. It's two territories that were not linked together, which would be predominantly Muslim. And the princely dominions of India, the princely provinces they call, ruled by Maharajas, could choose whether they wanted to belong to India or Pakistan. And most of them chose on the basis of the religion of their princely domain. But Maharaja Hari Singh was a great friend of Mountbatten's, and he wanted to join India, even though the majority of his population was Muslim. And Mountbatten said, OK, that's what we'll do. And immediately, Kashmir became an anomalous case inside India. Mm-hmm. And it received a sort of self-governing status to give it a lot of autonomy. But it was never a happy outcome. So there have been 4 wars between India and Pakistan, and 3 of them have been about Kashmir.
Why is Kashmir so significant to both sides?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totemic for essentially political and psychological reasons. It's not an economic hub. It's quite rich. It's a rich series of valleys, Jammu and the Kashmir Valley, very fertile.
Mm-hmm. But very beautiful.
Yeah, very beautiful. But I mean, neither side depends on it for their economies. It's not as if it's the centre of the software industry or the centre of a new computing industries for either side. But it does represent what both sides see as historical injustice. Mm-hmm. It represents the sort of the meeting point where the competition between Hindu and Muslim faiths becomes critical. And since 1989, of course, we've had very assertive government in India. Narendra Modi became Prime Minister in 2014 with the BJP, the Janata Party. And he's very nationalist. And in 2019, he suspended the constitutional special provisions, Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, which gives Kashmir special autonomous status.
So has it in essence then been kind of split down the two?
Yes, India's got 65% of the territory, and Pakistan, 35, almost 40% of the territory. It's something like that. And that line of control is historically very, very sensitive. And it varies. I mean, every few years, the line goes backwards and forwards a little bit with local initiatives or local skirmishing, and people live with a new line. It doesn't vary very much, but it's not absolutely fixed. It's fixed in general, but if you live there on the ground, you'd see that the line changes a little bit with local conditions.
And how close, I mean, literally, how close do Indian armed forces and Pakistani armed forces get in this part of the world?
Oh, they're looking at each other. It's a constant, like a ceasefire line, it's a constant line of monitoring and surveillance, and not much goes on either side of the line immediately that the other side doesn't really know about.
It strikes me that if you have Hindus, majority popped into one country, Muslims, majority popped into another country, I mean, two religions which have been at each other's throats in that part of the world for a long, long time. I mean, it's a disaster waiting to happen, isn't it?
Well, only if you don't have good fences. Good fences make good neighbours. And there's a good neighbour, good fence policy now between Pakistan, which is now main Pakistan, and East Pakistan as well, is now Bangladesh, separate state. And so there's no reason why Muslim majority Pakistan and Hindu majority India can't cooperate pretty well. They compete over all sorts of things for regional influence and so on. The problem of Kashmir is that that's where the fence is broken down. That's where there's a mixture. You haven't got a Muslim majority on one side and a Hindu majority on the other. You've got minorities on both sides who deeply resent the control that they are under most of the time.
Wasn't the whole point of this to stop them from going into conflict as much as they clearly have since partition?
Yes, I mean, this is an unresolved conflict. And always with these situations, there are lots of them around the world, say between the two Koreas or in Cyprus, whatever. You try to engineer a situation where some sort of partition arrangement or some sort of interim line of control, some sort of ceasefire line becomes established in history, and you can argue about it, but you don't fight over it. Mm-hmm. I mean, in Kashmir, that has come and gone, I'm afraid. For a few years, it seems okay, and then something will happen. And what is depressing about this is that one terrorist attack, albeit a very serious terrorist attack, 26 people killed and tourists, but that one terrorist attack can actually bring both sides towards military confrontation as we are now, because they're both now threatening to start a war. I suspect they won't, but they're both threatening that this could become the fifth war between India and Pakistan.
What then is the truth of the Indian allegation that Pakistan is and has long been a sponsor of terrorism directed at the Indian state?
There's no doubt in the mind of most independent analysts that is essentially true. Because Pakistan is very dominated by its military. I mean, it's often said that, Pakistan is a military with a government attached, not a government with a military attached. And what the Indians always say is that this is a state that's out of control when it comes to terrorism. They can't help themselves from dabbling. They dabble with the Taliban in Afghanistan, even though the Taliban in Pakistan is causing them real problems, because it suits them to allow these groups to destabilize Kashmir. Now, whether that is the explanation for what happened on the 22nd of April, nobody still knows.
Shouldn't we be concerned, if only for the fact that the United States, in previous years, the world's policemen would have been very, very quick to get actively involved in de-escalating tensions here? Well, right now, the United States isn't playing ball. No. The United States is staying home.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, the US doesn't want to get involved in this. China can't really act as a peacemaker because China is close to Pakistan. China is a real competitor to India. I mean, Indian-Chinese relations are about as bad as they've ever been, and probably going to get worse. And so if you think about the big powers, the United States is not going to get involved, China's not going to get involved, Russia is in no position to become involved. So you're thinking about, there's the UN. Funnily enough, Britain has a better introduction to both of them than most other countries, because Britain is one of the only countries that Pakistan takes seriously. So funnily enough, although I don't think we want this role, because this is a poison chalice, one of the few, certainly the only European power and one of the few sort of global actors that could speak to both of them meaningfully, particularly to Pakistan, is the United Kingdom. Whether we'll try to do that, given everything else that's going on, I don't know.
I mean, is there any chance that in the next couple of decades we could see something approaching a calming, a normalising of relations between India and Pakistan?
Well, there might be. It would need different leaderships in both countries. I mean, the thing at the moment is that India is in a very nationalist, assertive role. It's flexing its muscles in the world, because India is one of the four great powers in the world, one of the four big powers, and it has a big role to play in Asia. It knows that. And the Indian economy is on course to become one of the big three economies, along with the United States, China, and India, by about 2050. There's a lot wrong with the Indian economy, of course, in terms of efficiencies and so on, but it's on course to become a very big economy. Contrast that with Pakistan, which economically is looking at a $170 billion bailout from the IMF at the moment. The Pakistan economy is tanking in many, many respects. And although Pakistan is a very important power, it's politically not stable enough. I mean, arguably the most popular politician in Pakistan is Imran Khan, who's in prison. Pakistan doesn't have a particularly bright economic future ahead of it, and not necessarily a stable political future. And it may be that if an Indian leadership were able to work with Pakistan more than compete with it, then maybe there might be a new era in their relations. But on present trends, you don't see that in the next 5 years for sure.
When you have one side with far less to lose, one side with an economy tanking, and both sides with fingers not on the nuclear button, but close to it, it doesn't take much for things to go really, really badly wrong.
When you think about that in Indian-Pakistani relations, you realise that those politicians, when they get into a crisis, they all think that the other side are lunatics. And there is no reaction time because they're so close. Literally right on each other's borders. So short-range missile with a nuclear warhead will be there in 2 to 3 minutes. Not 20 minutes or 25 minutes. It could be fired very, very quickly. You're talking about, short-range weapons with nuclear warheads, not long-range ballistic missiles that you'd see being prepared and so on. It would indicate that both Indian and Pakistani key decision-makers get themselves very frightened by the prospect that the other side is illogical, is lunatic, and might actually unleash a nuclear weapon.
Thanks, Michael. That's your lot for this edition of The Daily. For the very latest on the situation between India and Pakistan, head to the front page of the website, skynews.com. The Daily's back tomorrow.
The first 100 days might be over, but President Trump is showing no signs of slowing down.
America will soon be greater than ever before.
So we're continuing to follow every twist and turn of this remarkable presidency.
And trying to make sense of what it all means for the US and for the rest of the world.
So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Malta Kellner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Sky News Trump 100, wherever you get your podcasts.